are important. So I hardly get any real negative feedback when I talk to the public about male-female differences. The one area on sex differences that's still an issue is when you look at the normal distribution of IQ, the means for men and women are essentially the same. There might be a tiny difference, it's subject to debate, but they're essentially the same, except out on the extreme end for mathematical ability. For mathematical ability, there seem to be more men than women at the extreme high end. There are women at the extreme high end.
And there are more men than women on the extreme left. So basically the curve is like more flat. Therefore, we will see more men in the extremes. And this is part of what Ted Hill theory was, that we tend to go to the extreme. The male want to go to the extreme, and we see it throughout all the animal kingdom. And this was like something that Darwin always already noticed, that the male tend to be more extremist in almost any feature. Yes?
That's generally correct. There are more men at the low end of IQ and more men at the high end. But there are women at both ends too. If you think about when you get to extreme mathematical ability, extremely good, there are plenty of women who are extremely good. And the average man on math is the same as the average woman, pretty much. It's really how many people are at the extreme. And there seems to be an advantage for men, which might explain why there are more men in mathematics and engineering and other vocations that require mathematical ability. That does not mean, however, that women can't do it.
No, of course. No, it's because I write it a lot in my book, but let me just fuse together two theories. We have Helmut Nyborg theory, which says basically the same thing, is that IQ for men and women is basically equal because we thought in the beginning that it was equal. So any question that leaned toward one sex was omitted from the original test. This is also Arthur Jensen idea in his book. But intelligence is positively correlated with brain size, and men's brain size is bigger than women's brain size, even controlling for body weight. So if it is actually so, we should expect that men average IQ will be slightly higher than women average IQ. Now, this slightly can be 3 points, 2 points, 4 points. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter on the center, but it's tremendously important on the right left. So even if you don't change the variance of the normal distribution, even if you just shift the men normal distribution 3 points to the right in the extreme end, 150, we will see much, much more men. What do you think about this theory?
This is the position that a lot of people take, and the data seems to support that. But it gets so complex because of social roles and whether or not women have the same opportunities early on. It's a very complex problem. And so for most IQ researchers are not interested in that. Educators, people interested in the disparity between men and women in the workplace, they're more interested in that kind of data. But as far as the intelligence research community goes, men and women are essentially equal. Whether or not one group has an advantage over the other group for certain highly specific mental abilities. It could be true that women have some verbal advantage over men at the high end. But again, this is a tiny part. And that's the male-female differences become much less controversial. The average group differences among races has always been controversial. It always will be controversial. And I'm not sure there's any new data on this. What's new is genetic and DNA data trying to tie psychometric scores to DNA-defined groups. And we're still at a very early stage of that. That only becomes important at some point if you want to predict IQ from DNA, then you might have to have a different kind of prediction, a different equation for different groups. What all this means on any practical level is not so clear. What you hope is on a molecular level, at some point, all these very intricate and complex and convoluted biochemical relationships from genes to behavior can be disentangled in some way to really tell us about the neural basis of intelligence or the neuroscience basis of intelligence. We're a long way from that, but there is movement in that direction.